The summer I turned 10, the air in Willow Creek felt heavy and thick, not just from the heat, but from quiet, unwritten rules. Our small town, set by the winding Blackwater River in the American South, was a place where everyone knew everyone. Or at least, they thought they did. It was a place of porch swings and buzzing bugs, of Sunday church and hushed talks, and of a quiet, strong unfairness that covered everything like the red dust on the roads. My name is Lily Mae, and that summer I saw the real truth of Willow Creek, a truth no 10-year-old should have to see. This is Engaging Voices, your destination for compelling narratives. Grab a coffee and settle in as we dive into stories filled with unexpected twists, relatable struggles, and powerful triumphs. Our house, a strong 2-story home with a big front porch, sat at the edge of town. From our porch swing, I could see the dusty dirt road that curved past the neat fenced homes of the white people and then turned into a rougher, less cared-for path that led to the black folks' part of Willow Creek. Papa, John Finch, was a lawyer, calm and steady, with eyes that seemed to hold all the wisdom of the world. He moved slowly and thoughtfully, his hands often behind his back as he listened more than he talked. Mama, Sarah, sang church songs while she cooked, her voice a steady, comforting sound that filled our home with warmth and peace. She worried easily, her forehead often wrinkled, but her love was a strong anchor. Before that summer, my world was mostly simple, kept safe within our yard, and the quiet stories of school. I knew there were white folks and colored folks, a difference as clear as the river flowing this way or that, but I didn't understand the hidden chains that held some people down and let others fly free. Then the Robinsons came. They moved into the small, old house just across the creek near the old, forgotten mill. Mr. Elijah Robinson, a man with wide shoulders from years of honest work in the fields, had a soft smile that rarely reached his eyes that seemed to carry a heavy sadness I didn't yet understand. His wife, Martha, spoke gently, and their daughter, Clara, was my age. Clara was amazing. She had braids that bounced when she ran, a laugh that sounded like tiny bells, and a curious mind like mine. We met by the creek, drawn by the same smooth rocks for skipping. Soon, our afternoons were full of whispered secrets, shared dreams, and brave trips into the woods behind our houses. Clara taught me how to tell how old a tree was by its rings, and I showed her how to catch lightning bugs in a jar. We were just 2 girls, connected by the simple joy of being kids, not knowing about the quiet anger of some of the grown-ups in town. But that anger was there, a low, constant hum under the surface of daily life. Mrs. Delia Gable, for example, lived 2 houses down from us. She was a woman with a sharp tongue and a face that always seemed grumpy. She kept her window blinds closed most of the time, watching the world with judging eyes, and her thoughts, often wrong and mean, spread through Willow Creek like a sickness. She had talked a lot about the Robinsons, complaining about their kind moving so close to good people. One hot afternoon, a week after Clara and I built our secret fort by the river bend, Mrs. Gable's loud scream cut through the heavy heat. It echoed down the street, making curious neighbors come out to their porches. "My locket! My grandma's silver locket! It's gone!" she cried loudly, her voice full of anger. Her eyes, looking around quickly, landed right on Mr. Robinson, who had been walking by her house, coming home from his work at the lumber mill, dust still on his clothes. "It was him! I saw him looking at my window earlier today. He stole it. The darkies are always stealing." Her words hung in the air, thick with blame, poisoned by the unfair ideas that had been in Willow Creek for a long time. My stomach twisted. Clara's father? He was the kindest man, always tipping his hat and offering a soft word, but Mrs. Gable's voice was loud, her accusation strong, and in Willow Creek, a white woman's word, especially one with Mrs. Gable standing in town, was believed more than any truth. Sheriff Brody, a man whose uniform always looked a bit too small and whose brain seemed just as limited, arrived soon after. He usually spent his days sleeping in his office, waking up only for easy gossip or an even easier arrest. He listened to Mrs. Gable's long, tearful story, nodding seriously. When Mr. Robinson, confused, tried to explain he had only been walking by, Sheriff Brody stopped him with a wave of his hand. He didn't ask questions. He didn't search Mrs. Gable's house. He didn't look for other clues. His mind, already made up by the color of Mr. Robinson's skin and Mrs. Gable's place in town, had found its bad guy. Mr. Robinson was taken away, his self-respect attacked, his quiet protests unheard under the noise of the accusation. Papa was home when the news reached us. He listened, his face serious, his jaw tightening with each word Mama told him from the gossiping neighbors. "He didn't do it, John," Mama begged. "You know Elijah. He's a good man." Papa nodded slowly, looking far away. The next morning, he walked to the jailhouse. He came out hours later, his face set. He had agreed to be Mr. Robinson's lawyer. Mama wrung her hands. "You know how folks are, John," she'd say, her voice full of fear. "This town, it'll tear you apart." She worried about the angry looks we'd get at church, the cold shoulders at the store, the way our family would be talked about. Papa would just nod, his decision getting stronger. "Someone has to stand up for what's right, Sarah, even if it costs us." And it did cost us. The days before the trial were like a silent protest against us. Friends who used to stop and chat now hurried past our house, looking away. Mama's baked goods, usually wanted, were now left untouched on doorsteps. Whispers followed us like shadows. At school, some children stopped playing with me. "Your daddy's helping a thief," one girl said sharply, her words sudden and hurtful. I felt the pain of unfairness, a smaller echo of what the Robinsons must have been going through. The hardest part was seeing Clara. Her once bright eyes now held a deep sadness, a hint of fear. Our fort stayed untouched, a quiet reminder of a friendship threatened by a world that had suddenly turned mean. I tried to talk to her, but her usual playful spirit was gone. She knew even more clearly than I did the heavy burden of unfair ideas, how they could steal your name, your freedom, your hope. The bad effects of prejudice were not just big ideas. They were real things that broke families, ruined trust, and took away people's very being. Mr. Robinson lost his job at the mill. The Robinson family was pushed away, their small amount of money getting less and less under the pressure of the false blame, and being left out by everyone. The day of the trial was hot and wet, the air thick with quiet tension. The small courthouse, usually quiet except for the creak of the old wooden floors, was packed. People stood in the walkways, stretched their necks from the back, some just to stare, others with eyes full of judgment and a wish to confirm their old wrong beliefs. I sat with Mama in the back, holding her hand tightly, my heart beating like a wild bird in a cage. Across the aisle, Clara sat next to her mother, her small hand holding her mother's dress, her face pale. Mrs. Gable sat on the witness stand, looking like a wronged Southern lady in her fancy lace and big hat. Her face was red, her voice sharp as she told her story, adding details, making dramatic pauses, painting Mr. Robinson as a sly, desperate criminal. She dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, and the jury, all white men from Willow Creek and nearby farms, nodded in sympathy. It didn't matter that Mrs. Gable often forgot things, that she often misplaced things, or that her accusations often came from her own unfair ideas. What mattered was the story, the easy person to blame. When it was Papa's turn to question her, he spoke softly, his voice a calm contrast to Mrs. Gable's loud acting. He didn't yell or raise his voice, he just asked simple questions, gently pulling back the layers of her story. He pointed out things that didn't match, calmly showed proof of Mrs. Gable's past forgetfulness, and slowly showed the weak points in her story. He never attacked Mrs. Gable as a person, only her shaky account. Then, Papa called Sarah, Mrs. Gable's housemaid, to the stand. Sarah was a quiet, humble black woman, her hands rough from years of work. She moved nervously, her eyes darting between Papa and Mrs. Gable. Papa asked her, "Sarah, did you see Mr. Robinson near Mrs. Gable's window on that day?" Sarah mumbled, "No, sir." Papa continued, "Did you, by any chance, see Mrs. Gable's locket anywhere in the house?" Sarah's eyes grew wide, then looked down at her lap. A tense quiet filled the courtroom. Suddenly Mrs. Gable jumped up. "Objection! This is bothering my maid. She knows nothing." "Your Honor," Papa said, steady, "I believe the witness has important information." The judge allowed the question. Papa repeated, gently, "Sarah, did you see the locket?" Sarah took a shaky breath. "Yes, sir," she whispered, her voice almost too quiet to hear. I found it under her sofa, when I was cleaning." A low sound went through the courtroom. Mrs. Gable's face twisted in a silent scream of anger. Papa continued, "And what did you do with it, Sarah?" Sarah looked up, her eyes begging. I put it back where I found it, sir. I was scared." Papa then pulled out a crumpled, handwritten note he had gotten from Sarah, a note that listed Mrs. Gable's lost items over the past year, including her reading glasses, a diamond pin, and yes, a silver locket, all found by Sarah in odd places inside the house. Papa didn't say Mrs. Gable was lying, but he quietly laid out the facts, showing how often she forgot things and how little real proof there was against Mr. Robinson. He showed how Mrs. Gable's locket had, in fact, been found under her own sofa by her maid. He showed how Mrs. Gable had been wrong before. He didn't yell or raise his voice. He just laid out the truth, clear as day, asking people to think clearly instead of letting their unfair ideas rule. But the truth, I learned that day, wasn't always enough to break down the strong walls of deep-seated unfairness. The jury, all white men, took a long, painful time. The air in the courtroom grew thick with quiet tension, with the weight of many years of wrong beliefs. Every minute felt like an hour. When the foreman finally stood, his face grim, and the decision was read, guilty, a shared gasp went through the courtroom, followed by a tense, uneasy quiet. My stomach dropped, falling like a stone down a well. I looked at Clara, her eyes wide and wet, a tear making a clean path down her dusty cheek. Her mother quietly cried next to her. Papa stood still, his shoulders slumped just a little, the heavy weight of the unfairness settling on him. Outside, the late afternoon sun felt harsh, almost mocking. Some people stared angrily at Papa, their faces twisted with disapproval for him helping a black man. Others hurried away, not looking at him, uncomfortable with the decision, but not wanting to fight it. Mr. Robinson was led away, his head down, his quiet dignity, the only shield against the cruel blow of unfairness. That night, Papa sat on the porch swing, its regular creak, a sad song. He stared out at the fireflies dancing in the humid night, their tiny lights making fun of the darkness that had fallen over our town. I went and sat beside him, snuggling close. "Why, Papa?" I whispered, my voice thick with tears I hadn't cried yet. "Why did they say he did it when he didn't? You showed them he didn't." He sighed, a deep, tired sound that seemed to carry the tiredness of the whole world. "Sometimes, Lily Mae," he said, his voice low and quiet, "people see what they want to see, not what's true. Their minds are made up long before they hear the proof. And sometimes it's harder to change a mind filled with prejudice than it is to change a law." He paused, looking at me. "But that doesn't mean we stop trying. It means we try harder. Because every person, no matter their color or their place in life, deserves fairness and respect. That's the only way we build a truly fair world." The decision left a long, dark shadow over Willow Creek. The Robinsons, even with Papa's help, faced even harder times. Mr. Robinson was now a convicted man, his good name ruined. The black community came together to support them, But the wider white community, pushed by Mrs. Gable's happy announcements, mostly condemned them. Unfairness had dealt a cruel blow, leaving scars that wouldn't heal easily. The wind of injustice felt smothering, but the truth, as Papa always said, was stubborn. It found a way to show itself. A few days after the decision, Sarah, Mrs. Gable's housemaid, came to our door again. This time, she didn't look nervous. She looked determined, though her hands still shook a little. In her hand, she held something small and shiny. It was the silver locket. Her voice, usually a whisper, was surprisingly firm. "Mr. Finch," she began, I couldn't live with it anymore." Mrs. Gable, she found it herself, caught in her scarf in her dressing table. But she said she needed to teach Mr. Robinson a lesson. She made me say I found it under the sofa, and then she made me keep quiet about finding it in her scarf. She said she'd fire me, send me away, if I ever told the truth. She wanted him out of Willow Creek. My eyes grew wide, and a wave of anger, hot and sharp, washed over me. Mrs. Gable hadn't just made a mistake. She had purposely lied, tricked, and forced someone, all to feed her deep-seated unfairness and get a good man out of town. The depth of her meanness, fueled by bigotry, was truly shocking. Papa took the locket, his face serious, but with a hint of new purpose in his eyes. He didn't wait. He went straight to Sheriff Brody, the locket held firmly in his hand. This time, Papa didn't ask. He presented the clear proof and Sarah's tearful, brave confession. Sheriff Brody, red-faced and complaining, caught between Mrs. Gable's anger and the clear truth, had no choice. He couldn't ignore the confession, nor the locket, now in Papa's hands. He had to admit the truth. He had to. The town's reputation, and his own, were at stake. With great unwillingness, he ordered Mr. Robinson's release. The news spread fast through Willow Creek. Mrs. Gable's carefully built fake image broke apart. The very people who had once believed her every word now pulled back in shame or disgust. Her place in society fell sharply, replaced by quiet disapproval. She became the target of the very gossip she had so often used against others. Sarah, despite her fears, found a quiet strength and a new job with a kinder family in a nearby town. Her courage, though small, had started a tremor of change. Mr. Robinson was let go a few days later, a free man once more, but the shadow of the false accusation, the shame and the suffering never truly left him. The deep scars of unfairness remained, showing the bad effects of a system built on prejudice. Yet, his head was held a little higher. His smile, though still sad, now held a hint of quiet victory. Willow Creek didn't change overnight. Prejudice, like a tough weed, had deep roots. The whispers didn't disappear completely, but something big did shift. The clear unfairness, shown for all to see, made people face uncomfortable truths. Sheriff Brody's power went down. His easygoing way now looked like he was bad at his job. His prejudice, a clear flaw. Some people, shamed by how quickly they judged, started to question their own wrong ideas. Others, inspired by Papa's strong stand, found their own quiet bravery to speak up against smaller unfairness. The summer I turned 10 was the summer I learned what real courage meant, not just in big acts, but in quiet, steady, sticking up for fairness. I saw the quiet bravery of Papa, standing up for what was right even when it was unpopular and cost him a lot. I saw the heavy load of unfairness and how it could crush a spirit. But I also saw how strong people could be, the power of truth, and the very important need to respect everyone, no matter their skin color or what others thought of them. My friendship with Clara, once threatened, grew strong again, better than before, a living example of connection winning over separation. We spent the rest of the summer by the creek, and even though the world around us was still not perfect, the air in our secret fort felt lighter, full of the promise that fairness and justice, though sometimes slow, often hurt and always hard won, would finally win over discrimination. The Willow Creek secret was out, not just the truth about the locket, but the truth about how a community could be stained by prejudice, and how, slowly, painfully, it could begin to heal. If Lily Mae's story touched you, please think about subscribing to Engaging Voices and liking this story to help us share more tales of courage and change.